Hey guys, welcome back to another Maledictor update. This is going to be a huge one because I missed last month, so we've got 2 months in one. 2 productive months at that, so let's jump on into it really quick with a great one. Interactable sounds. So it's a small functionality update, but it should make things a little bit more interactive. You press the use button on something and you get a sound that plays. The first thing that I implemented that with was a toilet flushing, so you can do that now, so that's great. Next, we got French translations implemented, and with that, we have all translations fully implemented, which means that now you can play the game in English, French, Spanish, German, and Russian. Now, that changes only the text for it. It doesn't change the dialogue at all. That would just get really expensive really fast, and there's not so much story in this game that you're going to miss out on it if you don't speak English. And besides, one of the things that I am pretty happy about with the change, or with the way that it was implemented, is if we go into our main menu here, see our language selection. You can change it just live, right from the main menu or from the pause menu. You don't have to restart your game, you don't have to launch in a special mode or anything. It's just changing the text, so it's very, very quick and easy. So I'm happy about that. And with our translations, we go back in here. One of the things for languages is that you can see that some words are a lot longer than others in different languages, especially in Russian and German. So for kind of a responsiveness change, if you look at our quit button, the quit button, it's come in pretty much right up until the word in order to get it to highlight, which I kind of prefer. That way you know kind of exactly where the button is. But the quit button is going to suddenly change in size a lot when you change over to another language. And the way that it was before is that the button size was independent of the text. And so what I had to do is I had to go in and kind of figure out what was a good size button for each language. And I have it now so that it dynamically changes the size of the button based on the language. So now we go in. Quit in Spanish is exactly where the text starts. Same with French, same with Russian, and same with German. So that way it feels responsive in all the different languages. And next up we have our HUD got touched up. And this is also part of a translation thing, but also just kind of a nicety thing. If I go into our levels, we go into when I'm 6 and we just load in. So you can see that the HUD was touched up just a little bit, but really one of the big changes here is that now it used to say health, armor, heals, ammo, keys. And that's great if you only have an English version of the game, but because we are switching over to multiple languages, you run into the issue that you did with the button sizes, where some words in other languages are much, much, much longer than in English. So you would wind up with either having to make the text size so small that it would be unreadable and would look bad, or you can switch it over to something like an icon-based HUD, which is what I did. So now we have icons that I think are fairly readable. You know what they are. So they should be pretty much universal. So we've got that fixed up. And kind of in the same vein as the dynamically sized menu buttons, we now also have menu resizing and menu buttons resize for language. So that is in things like the keybind menu. The menus were resized so that they will they just kind of make a better use of the space. and they also will work for different languages based on the different sized words. So we've got that going for us now. Then you can tell this was an early last month patch note, blocking out E1M6. We have done a little bit more than block out E1M6 now at this point. So, yeah. But, you know, I have to include it because it was part of the patch notes and it helps inflate the amount of stuff that I've done. So, you know, I'll take it. And then the classics, more materials, more models, more sprites. And all three of those, there's a lot in each one of those because most of the level takes place in this giant house. And with that, you need to have a lot of rooms, and you need to have, ideally, a lot of those rooms look different from each other, so you need to have a bunch of different stuff in them. So that's a lot, and I am still working on it. Need to have a lot of sprites and materials and models made for every room, pretty much, so I'm doing a lot. But it's coming together and it's looking and feeling great, I think. So I'm really, really happy with this level so far. And yeah, it's just going to be a lot of work on making assets. So we're getting there. Next, fix the E1M1 house again. I can really tell how much I have learned about modeling in Unreal every time I go back into E1M1 and see that house. So it's almost every time I go back into E1M1, I look at the house that's on fire and I find more things that are wrong with it that I need to fix. Now, fortunately, I fixed all the major issues, like, you know, the windowsills not being the correct size, but I still find things like misaligned textures and just weird things like stretched UVs in certain areas. And yeah, so this house in E1M6 that I made is much bigger and more complex than that house, and this does not have any issues. Well, it doesn't have any issues that the player can see, which is just as good as not having any issues at all. So I'm at least learning. I can tell that I've learned a lot about modeling in Unreal, especially recently. This level, I've learned a lot about it, and it's really kind of stuff that I already knew to start with, but never really used because I was still trying to get a hang of the ultra basics. So now I have been able to move up and branch out into the regular basics. So I've at least learned a lot about modeling from this level, so the models are getting better now. But then that also means that I go back into the previous levels and I find things to fix, like that house. Next, cleaned and improved the crouch code. So the crouch code was something that I made when I very, very started making the movement system in Maledictor. It was a while ago, and I had to make it from watching a tutorial, and the tutorial had kind of a bad practice in it, and that caused an issue where if you held down the crouch button, you started to crouch, but then you let go of it, then your view would suddenly shoot all the way down to the maximum depth of your crouch, and then it would pop back up. So it was really jarring if you didn't make a full crouch. And so I really didn't like that. And it was also called on tick, which means it's bound to your frame rate, which means it's being called every single time that you get, a frame. So say you're running the game at 144 FPS, that means that your crouch code is getting called 144 times per second. And that's not necessary at all. So I wound up removing it from tick, so it is no longer bound to your frame rate. It's bound to a timer, and you can cancel it in the middle of the crouch, and it just goes back up smoothly. So it works much better. It's much more efficient, and I made the code a lot smaller too. So all around, big improvement there. And then similarly, Weapon Bob was improved, which was another thing that was from another tutorial. And just like the crouch code before, that was called on tick. So the weapon bobbing is just when you move around. You can see that your gun starts kind of moving around left to right. Just kind of simulates walking a little bit better. And so I made that a lot smoother. I made it feel a lot more natural. And again, it's no longer on tick, so it's not being called every frame. So that way, that's better now. With the crouch and weapon bob no longer bound to the frame rate, none of my code is any longer bound to frame rate. With the exception of looking for a controller being connected, but that's that's absolutely nothing. So that's just about zero cost check, and you kind of need to have that check be on frame. That way, it's just much more responsive when you're checking to see if your controller is plugged in, and also for controller inputs too. So minimal amount of input lag and maximum responsiveness for that. But anyway, that's its own thing. Things that do not need to be on tick are no longer on tick. Fixed footstep sound detection. This is another really good one that bugged the hell out of me before. So the way that it worked before was when you would have a transition here, like from dirt to grass, you have different sound effects for the footsteps. So you will have a dirt sound when you are walking on dirt, and then you'll have a grass sound when you're walking on grass. The way that it worked before was when you would transition over from dirt to grass, or from one surface to another, you would hear one extra footstep from the old surface that you were no longer on. So you would step off of dirt onto grass, and you would hear one extra footstep from dirt. And so I went and I fixed that, and now it is much more responsive, and it is accurate to the surface that you're standing on, which also includes when you jump onto a surface. Before, it would play the surface beneath what you were standing on, or sometimes like the old surface that you were on before. So now it actually detects which surface you're standing on, so it feels much better. And now for a big one. So Gore, Spark, Dirt, Concrete, Glass, IED, Molotov, and Grenade sprites or effects are now no longer particle effects. They are all sprite based. So the reason why I did away with that, with all their particle effects, there's no particle effects left in the game, is because there was a big issue that I did everything I could to try to fix this issue. That it was most noticeable when you would have a shotgun, walk up to an enemy, and jib them right in front of you. You would wind up with a massive frame drop. And it was completely unfixable. The only way that you could get rid of it was to get rid of the blood particle effect. And the reason that I heard that, so from the way that it was explained to me, and granted this is probably a simplified explanation for something that I don't entirely understand, so make that of it what you will, but the explanation was that when you have something like a blood particle effect, it's got a lot of transparency in it. and you have a lot of transparent particles in the effect. And so when you are far away, it's not rendering the transparency kind of the same way. But when you get close, basically your entire screen is just nothing but transparent particles. And that uses a lot of performance. So there was really no way around that. So I had to get rid of the blood effect from when you would jib somebody, because if you would jib them with a shotgun, you would lose. There were some cases where I would lose like 60 FPS from that. It was a very noticeable drop. And so I deleted that, and I made it an animated sprite instead. But the problem is that if you have one effect that's an animated sprite and all the rest are particle effects, then the animated sprite is going to stand out a lot. So you need to have it be consistent, which means I had to get rid of all the particle effects. So I went and I animated all the effects. And it has the nice little benefit of they perform very, very well. And I think to be fair, they look different. Absolutely. It's definitely a different style. You know, you have 3D particles versus 2D animations. But I think in several cases, it is a noticeable improvement. And in other cases, at worst, you know, it's a difference. You know, it's a difference in style. At worst, I'd say. And I feel like that's... Obviously, I might be a little biased, but I feel like that is a realistic take on it. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own taste with it, but... You know. Hopefully, other people see it as either an improvement or, at worst, a difference in style choice. But it was a necessary change because losing 60 FPS from jibbing somebody with a shotgun is completely unacceptable. Next, we've got pickup material update. So the way that it worked before is I had light bulbs on every one of these pickups, and that was so that if you were in a dark area, they would glow and you could see them. What I did instead now is to cut down on the amount of lights that you need. I made it so that now they just glow on their own. So they look a lot better. Because before the light bulb was kind of static, and I would have to make it a fully dynamic light that would move up and down along with the sprites as they would float. And it just didn't look good. So this way, you can see them in all different lights, and it's, I think, a pretty nice looking effect. It's obviously, you know, subtle. It's just a glowing sprite, but I think it looks better. I might need to kind of tweak the brightness on it a little bit, just drop it down some, but that's fine. I can do that, no problem. So next, fixed floating enemies. Find the exact note here. Dead enemies floating fixed. So enemies would, very rarely when they would die, is they could be left floating up in the air. Obviously, not really what you want. So that would mostly happen when you would blow them up and it would launch their body up, and then they would die, and then their body would just float. So, yeah, a little bit of a problem. Fix that now. And that's not the only fix that I have for dead bodies, which leads us into enemy body improvement. So if we look at our enemy blueprints here, you can see there's quite a bit of code in here. And that means that all this code, plus this code and this code and no construction script, and this code, all this code, plus whatever additional code the enemy blueprint type has, or the enemy type blueprint has. Like this. An axe cultist, for instance, would have all of this plus all of this, even when they're dead. Which means that they're kind of a larger sized actor in terms of the game. So that's not necessarily bad. Like, you can have plenty of large actors, but you know, every time that you've got a large actor like that, you start adding more and more and more, and there starts to be a performance impact. And it's not like there's a huge performance impact from the enemies that we've got in the game right now, but you know, it's just good practice, especially for things like lower end machines, to try to get rid of that. Because if an enemy is dead, all you need is a rotating sprite, really. And so that's what I did. I made it so that now, when an enemy dies, they will get replaced with this much code, which is basically just a slightly more advanced rotating sprite. And it is a seamless switch. Let me get my light back in. Okay. There's a seamless switch here. Let's kill them off. You can't tell when they switched to a, from a enemy to a corpse actor. So it's a seamless switch, and it is replacing a lot of code with basically nothing. So that's a really nice improvement, and that'll just help out pretty much lower end machines, but it's good to squeeze out extra performance wherever you can, because over time that'll add up. Next, we've got enemy body improvement, and that is... Actually, no, that's what we just did. There is actually an improvement with the bodies, though. Maybe not jib them. Shotgun might be a little strong, but anyway. So with weapons that cause a force, before, enemy bodies would just sit there, but now they actually get moved around based on whether the weapon that you are shooting applies a force, like an explosion or not. So now you can kind of move the bodies around. They're a little bit more interactable. I want to do things like I want to expand the gore system more, so that if you've got a normal body that's not jibbed, then you could jib it. I think that would be fun. So I want to add that in, but for now, that'll be for later when I'm much closer to the early access release, which is getting a lot closer now. We barely need any more levels put in the game before we get to that. We need E1M8, and E1M8 is a boss arena, whereas we're on E1M6 and pretty far into E1M6 at that, so only a few more levels to go. Anyway, we'll get to the jibbing revamp later, because we already kind of had a jibbing revamp, but we'll see that in a second. Next, we've got projectile bug fixed. So this is a big problem that we ran into before that I wasn't sure if it was a problem or not, and I finally figured out, yes, it's a problem. So the IED, it used to be, and you would detonate it like that, the first enemy hit by it would basically block the explosion, and only they would be affected. So throw it in front of this guy, and we detonate it, and you can see now it is correctly blowing up everybody who is within the explosion radius, which also might mean that we might need to make a couple of balance passes on things like the IED, because now it's a lot more powerful than it seemed. But to be fair, you're probably not going to run into 5 axe cultists all bundled up like this in the regular game. At least not that often. And if you do, I mean, that's kind of what the IED is meant to be. It's supposed to be a low capacity, high damage, large radius weapon. So, you know, it's if you manage to jib 5 enemies with it, then, you know, maybe that's just a good use of the IED. So we'll see. I'm definitely gonna get at least 2 more test builds done for my testers. So if it comes back and they say that the IEDs are busted now, then maybe I'll tone it down a little bit. But for now, I'm gonna see how it is. So that affects 4 different weapons, by the way. So that is a big fix. I'm glad to have gotten that fixed up. Next up, we've got A10 explosion sprites and A10 and IED sound improvements. That's pretty much how it sounds. Self-explanatory. They sound much better. They look better. I'm happy with them. Fixed a fire damage bug. So that was another thing that I noticed, is that the Molotovs didn't feel all that great. It kind of... I wanted to have a fire effect on enemies so that enemies would burn over time and they would take damage over time from the fire. And they just never seemed to be taking that much damage. And I found out it was a bug with the fire calculation, and it was just not really ticking the damage on that. So now, the Molotovs work as intended. Now the Molotovs will actually be able to do what you need them to do. I kind of styled them a little bit after the flare gun from Blood, in that you can choose to either let the damage over time effect play out and use less ammo that way, or if you need them dead right now, then you can stack the damage onto them with another Molotov. So now the Molotovs feel much better. I'm really happy with them so far. Next we've got burning effect sprites, which you just saw. I think that the new burning effect looks much better. Before, they had a fire particle effect surrounding them, and I didn't like it. That was kind of always intended to be a placeholder anyway, but now it looks much better. And it comes with the added benefit of me being able to show off my sprites a little bit more. So I worked hard on those burning enemy sprites, so I'm happy to be able to use them. Then we got A10 designator sprites, bleeding effect sprites, water leak effect sprites, water drop effect sprites, jib adjustments, and fix. So again, replacing all of the particle effects with sprites, and then the jib adjustments and fix was that a lot of the time I did not realize it, but before, the jibs were not actually despawning. They were actually falling through the map, and they would just fall forever, and they would not delete. So now they delete. That's really good. But also, I added a little bit of an extra effect for them. If we can, there we go. You see, when a jib hits the wall, we have a blood splatter on the wall and also on the ground. So whenever the jibs hit something, they kind of bounce, do a little blood splatter, and then they leave a little blood decal behind, so they feel much better. And then, in the same vein here, we've got bloody footprints. So, if we walk through a blood puddle and then walk along, you can see we leave behind some bloody footprints. And it lasts for a certain amount of time, but yeah, so it is very, a little extra, little bit of immersion there, and I'm very happy with it. I might need to make them a little bit brighter, but so far I am very, very happy with that. Makes it feel a lot better. I'm looking a lot to kind of some of the Doom gore mods and seeing kind of what they do, because they've got some very satisfying ones there. So I'm happy to be able to kind of look and take some inspiration from them and from other games as well. This is not like Doom mods were the first ones to do bloody footprints on the ground, but anyway. I'm happy with that. I want to do more. Like I said, I want to still do more with the gore system. That's probably something I'm going to be touching up for a while. But right now, big progress made on that. It's much better feeling, I think. Performs much better. A lot of bugs fixed. I'm really happy with that. Next, finished blocking E1M6. You've seen that, yeah. I am done blocking out E1M6. Next, Molotov sprite fixes. So that is brightness and throw size. It used to be that throwing the Molotov was just a little too bright when you would throw it, but also there was one sprite in particular that was much larger when the Molotov is tumbling through the air. One of the sprites for that animation was much bigger than the others, and it looked weird. So I went in and I resized it so that it's now appropriately sized, so it doesn't look like the Molotov's growing for one frame. Next, door fix. Moved collision boxes resetting on load. Yeah, so the door fix is something that happened with very few doors, to be fair. There were some doors that if I wanted to put in something like a fake door or a door that was stuck or only worked from one side or something, then I would move the collision box to be somewhere else. And that would work once. That would not work when you would save the game and then load it, because when you load the game, it deletes all the doors and then puts in new copies of them. And what that would do is that would reset the door collision box to where it defaults to. And so that would mean that I couldn't really do fake doors. So now I've got fake doors. And that also comes with another benefit of, it doesn't have all the door code in it. So that's good. So we've got that working for us. And then finally, weapon heal weapon switch bug fixed. Man, that's an awkwardly written one. But anyway, so this was a problem where you could have Molotovs and IEDs coming out after healing when you were empty. So if you threw a Molotov, your last Molotov, you'd throw it, and then because you don't have any more Molotovs, it doesn't pull up your another Molotov on the screen. So if we just show you what I mean, there, we don't have any Molotovs, so we don't have anything in our hand. And if we switch back, no Molotovs, nothing in our hand. So the problem here was that if I would go to heal while I had nothing in my hands, I'd heal, and then it would pull out another Molotov. I wouldn't have one to throw, but it would show us holding one. And so I fixed that so that now I don't have an adrenaline here to heal with, but anyway, now we heal and then it's just empty hands like it should be. So that's good. So that all works correctly. Same with having the detonator with the IED, so it pulls out the correct sub weapon option now rather than just pulling out the main weapon. So that's a nice fix, and a fix to a bug that I found completely on accident. So that's very good. And that is it for this update. I tried to get through it kind of fast. Still wound up being a 35-minute update, but, you know, considering most of my updates are about 20 minutes each, you know, not bad. Shaved a little bit of time off here. So, yes, I am currently really working through E1M6. I'm having to do a whole lot of extra work on it, but it is so far, I think, a very, very good looking map. And I'm really, really happy with this. Oh, this is a little something I forgot to mention. We've got buzzing flies now. I know. Finally. We finally brought the game to the current day. But anyway. Yeah, so I'm bringing the map up where it needs to be. We don't need it to be like that. Get back. Alright, there we go. Yeah, so I'm having to go into each individual room and decorate each one. So it is a little slow going on this, but it's fun. I'm having a really good time with this map. It's letting me be really, really creative. I get to do a lot of fun stuff, like, you know, old libraries. I'm really looking at old classic horror games like Alone in the Dark for things like that. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm getting to be really creative with a lot of these things. So there's going to be a lot more fun stuff that I'm adding in. I think this is going to be a very good level. I've got a good feeling about it, which means it's probably going to turn out to be my worst one. Hopefully not. We'll see. But anyway, I will see you guys next month. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we'll have a lot of progress made in that time. I want to get to E1M7 really soon, so I'm going to try to work through this one as fast as I can. But anyway, I will see you guys next month. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one.